بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم قال الله تعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ويسألونك عن ذي القرنين قل سأتلو عليكم منه ذكرا صدق الله العظيم. Last week, if you recall, ending with verse number 82, we had concluded with the story of Musa and Khadr alayhima min Allahi as-salatu wa taslim, the story of knowledge, the journey of ilm, of adab, of tarbiyah. We had ended that discussion, and now we begin a new story in the riveting chapter of Surah Al-Kahf. If you recall and you remember, in the backdrop in verse number 1 or episode number 1, I had said that the sababun nuzul, the reason, the backdrop behind the revelation of the surah, was the delegations of the Meccans that came to the Prophet ﷺ, and they asked 3 questions. And they said, if you can answer these 3 questions, then we will be convinced on the veracity of your prophethood. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ. They asked about the ruh, and the answer was given in the previous chapter at the end. Then they asked about the sleepers of the cave, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought their story in the very beginning. And the third question, they said, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ. Tell us about this person, ذُو الْقَرْنَيْنِ. Who was he? Where was he? What did he do? What's his story? What's his backdrop? And so on and so forth. So this brings us into verse number 83, a new story, a new tale. Before we begin, I'll give a quick overview of ذُو الْقَرْنَيْنِ. There's a dispute whether he was a wali or whether he was a nabi. Just like there was a dispute with Khadr alayhi salatu wasalam, was he a nabi or was he a wali? And the preferred opinion in Khadr alayhi salatu wasalam, he was a nabi. When it comes to Dhul Qarnayn, whether he was a wali or a nabi, the preferred opinion is he was a wali. And we know every nabi is a wali, but not every wali is a nabi. Every prophet is a saint, but not every saint is a prophet. So the preferred opinion in Dhul Qarnayn, he was a pious person. He was a wali. Unanimously agreed he was a pious person, and he was a king who ruled all over the different places that he traveled. Now, mu'minan wa kafiran, 2 believers and 2 disbelievers. There were 4 kings in history who ruled over the entire lands. In terms of the 2 believers, mu'minan, one of them is Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, and the other was Dhul Qarnayn. And kafiran, 2 disbelievers who were kings who ruled over the entire lands. One was Namrud, and the other, his name was Bukht Nasr. 2 disbelievers who ruled over the entire lands. In what era did he feature? There are many different opinions. In Bidayah wa Nihaya, Ibn Kathir makes the strong argument that he was featured at the same era as Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. Furthermore, he even establishes proof that Dhul Qarnayn and Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam met in Makkah Mukarramah. He establishes proof in Bidayah wa Nihaya. But different scholars have different opinions about the era. Wajhu Tasmiyah, the reason why he was called Dhul Qarnayn. What was the reason behind this name? In Arabic, Qarn could mean century, 100 years. That's one. Qarn could also mean the horn, the 2 horns on the animal, Dhul Qarnayn. So some people say it refers to the fact that he had 2 horns on his helmet. Therefore, he was called Dhul Qarnayn. Now, if you look in all the books of history, and I must be clear, this is not any context from the Quran. This is from historical narrations, different tafasir. They have answered these questions. When you look in different books of history, there were many people who were given the name Dhul Qarnayn. For example, Iskandar, Alexander the Great. He was a person on his helmet. He had the 2 horns. And this adds to the complexity of the issue, because there were so many people called Dhul Qarnayn that who is this referring to? Who exactly is this? And again, we come back to the same principle, أَبْهِمُوا مَا أَبْهَمَهُ اللَّهُ. Leave vague and ambiguous what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala left vague and ambiguous. If there was any fruit and any benefit and any fa'idah and any maqsad, hadaf, objective, anything in you knowing exactly who he was, why he was called this, where he lived, what was his era, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have mentioned it. He left vague, we leave it vague. In his travels, Dhul Qarnayn, in the first, and we will get to his travels, in the first trip, he travels to the west. And in the second trip, he travels to the east. This is mentioned explicitly in the Quran. He has a journey to the west, he has a journey to the east. His third journey, the direction is not explicitly mentioned, but there is almost the unanimous opinion that it was to Shimal, to the north. So therefore, some of the Mufassirun say that because he traveled to the west and he traveled to the east, it's almost like the two ends. You know, they call it the Horn of Africa, the two ends. That's why he was called Dhul Qarnayn, because he was king over both the west and the east. Wallahu a'lam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ. So they ask you, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, meaning the delegation from Yemen, meaning the delegation of the Meccans. They ask you about Dhul Qarnayn. Tell us, who is this person? قُلْ سَأَتْلُو عَلَيْكُم مِّنْهُ ذِكْرًا. Tell them, soon I will narrate to you his tale. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not say, سَأَتْلُو عَلَيْكُمْ ذِكْرَهُ. Soon I will mention to you his narrative, his story. He says, قُلْ سَأَتْلُو عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْهُ ذِكْرًا. And min comes for تبعيد. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يُعْجِبُكَ وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَقُولُ أي بعض الناس. It comes for some. So قُلْ سَأَتْلُو عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْهُ ذِكْرًا. Soon I will tell you a portion, some. I'm not going to give you all the details. This is not like in the story of Kahf. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave many more details. In the story of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave many more details. سَأَتْلُو عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْهُ ذِكْرًا. I'll give you a portion. I'll give you a little bit. تبعيد, some. What's beneficial, what you need, what is فائدة. قُلْ سَأَتْلُو عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْهُ ذِكْرًا. إِنَّا مَكَّنَّا لَهُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. مَكَّنَ يُمَكِّنُ تَمْكِينًا. إِنَّا, we positioned him. We empowered him. We gave him strength. We gave him quwwah. We gave him kingship in the earth. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says regarding Surah Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, وَكَذَلِكَ مَكَّنَّا لِيُوسُفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ يَتَبَوَّأُ مِنْهَا حَيْثُ يَشَاءُ. We were the ones we empowered and gave Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam strength, that he was able to go to Egypt as he pleased, and he was given prime minister and a kingship. وَكَذَلِكَ مَكَّنَّا لِيُوسُفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِنَّا مَكَّنَّا لَهُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. We positioned Dhul Qarnayn in the earth. He was a great king. وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ سَبَبًا. And we gave him from all the things different means and different factors. Now when you see this in the Quran, وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ سَبَبًا, then some ignorant people, they say, oh, so he had everything? He was given everything? No. وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ سَبَبًا. He was given everything مُتَعَلِّقٌ, that was connected with his kingship. So whatever he needed to be a great ruler, whatever he needed to be king, we gave him that. For example, Rani's driving with Karam and they're going home. And Karam says, Dad, could we get some pizza? Could we get some fries? Rani says, we have everything at home. Now, do they have everything at home? Yes, they do. But do they have everything at home? No, they don't have everything at home. But he says, no, we have everything we need at home. We have everything we need at home. When it comes to the story of Hudhud and Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, he says, oh, min kulli shay'in, she was given every single thing. وَلَهَا عَرْشٌ عَظِيمٌ. She has everything. Did she have everything? She didn't even have iman. But he says she had everything connected to the zina, the beautification, the adornment of this world. Similarly, وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ سَبَبًا. We gave him everything connected to his kingship. فَأَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا. So he sets off. He goes, he travels, he traverses, he embarks. حَتَّى إِذَا بَلَغَ مَغْرِبَ الشَّمْسِ. Until he comes to the furthest west point that people were residing. Until he comes, حَتَّى إِذَا بَلَغَ مَغْرِبَ الشَّمْسِ. Until he comes to the place of the setting of the sun. The furthest west point there where people are residing. وَجَدَهَا. He finds it, meaning the sun, تَغْرُبُ فِي عَيْنٍ حَمِئَةٍ. He finds the sun setting. Ayn means spring, and hami'atin means murky and dirty and blackened. He finds the sun setting in a murky spring. Now, again, this doesn't literally mean that the sun was setting in a murky spring. But from the onlooker, if you look at the horizon, if you look over the ocean, if you look over a big body of water, and you see the ball of the sun setting, it appears, it gives the look, the zahir, the appearance that the sun is setting in the water. Of course, the sun is not setting in the water. It just gives the appearance that the sun is setting in the water. Similarly, when it rises and you see the ball come over the horizon, it appears like it's coming out of the water. but it's not coming out of the water. That's just the appearance. Min ayn, a spring. The Mufassirun write, this is not a literal spring, but any body of water. It could be a ocean, a pond, a lake, a big body of water. Hami'atin literally means muddy, murky, dirty. But the Mufassirun also write, it doesn't necessarily mean that it was a literally dirty body of water, but rather at the time of the setting of the sun, and now it's a little bit dark, and it's a little bit cloudy, and it's a little bit shady, then a body of water will look darkened. It doesn't mean that the body of water was actually murky, but it gives off the appearance that it was from a distance. With the way that the sun was hitting, it gave off a murky type of blackened type of view. For example, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the gardens of Jannah, He says, mudhammatan, idhamma yadhamu, means blackened. Now, are the gardens of Jannah blackened? The Mufassirun write no, but in the shade of the trees, the wata afnan, now there's branches and the fruit and how it's hanging, and it's a little bit of a darkish blue, darkish green tint. It looks almost black. It looks almost black. في عين حمئة ووجد عندها قوما, and he finds a group of people there. In the context that follows, this was a group of people who were disbelievers. They were disbelievers, and they had been presented with the message of Islam prior. So they were disbelievers who had been already given the message of Iman and Islam, and they disbelieved. قُلْنَا, we said. Now I said regarding Dhul Qarnayn, there was two opinions, whether he was a wali or a nabi. Those who say that he was a nabi, they take qulna as awhayna. We gave him wahi. We instructed him. We told him, we gave him wahi. That makes him a prophet. Those who say wali, there are two opinions. Either they say qulna alhamna, we inspired. But this is a weak opinion, because in the sentences that follow, Dhul Qarnayn is given two options, and these two options are of drastic measure, and it could not be from mere inspiration. So qulna, we related to him via the Prophet of the time. Via the Prophet of the time we instructed him. فَلَمَّا فَصَلَ طَالُوتُ بِالْجُنُودِ قَالَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مُبْتَلِيكُمْ بِنَهَرٍ. Talut was a king, and Dawood ﷺ was not yet a prophet. How did Talut know that they were going to be tested by the water? He was told via the Prophet of the time. Who is the Prophet of the time? It's not important. It's not relative to the story. But he was instructed by the Prophet of the time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, from them, وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ نَقْصُصَ عَلَيْكَ, there are those who we relate to you the story. وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ لَمْ نَقْصُصَ عَلَيْكَ, and from the prophets there are those we don't narrate to you the story. We don't know who the Prophet of the time was. It's not relevant. قُلْنَا, we said, O Qarnayn, إِمَّا أَن تُعَذِّبَ وَإِمَّا أَن تَتَّخِذَ فِيهِمْ حُسْنًا. Either you punish them for their disbelief after already being presented the message. This is where you get the indication that the message has already been presented. وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ إِلَيْهِمْ رَسُولًا. They had already been presented the message. أَوْ تَتَّخِذَ فِيهِمْ حُسْنًا. Or the other option is you deal with them in a good manner, in a like manner. You give them respite. You preach to them for the second time. You give them the message again. قَالَ أَمَّا مَنْ ظَلَمَ فَسَوْفَ نُعَذِّبُهُ ثُمَّ يُرَدُّ إِلَى رَبِّهِ فَيُعَذِّبُهُ عَذَابًا نُكْرًا. Dhul Qarnayn says, أَمَّا مَنْ ظَلَمَ, as for the person who transgresses and oppresses and does wrong. So indication, mahdhuf, hidden, apparently you can figure out from the context that he says, okay, from the clemency and kindness of his nature, we will deal with them in a good manner, and we will give them a second chance, and we will present the opportunity again. And after presenting the opportunity for the second time, أَمَّا مَنْ ظَلَمَ, أي كَفَرَ, to disbelieve. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَلَمْ يَلْبِسُوا إِيمَانَهُمْ بِظُلْمٍ. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَلَمْ يَلْبِسُوا إِيمَانَهُمْ بِظُلْمٍ. Those who believe and they don't dilute their iman with dhulm, أي kufr. They don't dilute their iman with kufr. Dhulm can mean kafara. أَمَّا مَنْ ظَلَمَ, أي كَفَرَ, who disbelieves for the second time, فَسَوْفَ نُعَذِّبُهُ, then soon we will punish him. ثُمَّ يُرَدُّ إِلَى رَبِّهِ, then he will be returned to his Lord. فَيُعَذِّبُهُ عَذَابًا نُكْرًا, and he will be punished an even greater punishment. كَذَلِكَ الْعَذَابُ وَلَعَذَابُ الْآخِرَةِ أكبر ثم يرد إلى ربه فيعذبه عذابا نكرا وأما من آمن, as for the one who believes, وعمل صالحا, and he does righteous deeds, فله جزاء الحسنى, then for him will be a great reward. هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان, is there any recompensation for good other than good? أما من, those, that one, آمن وعمل صالحا فله جزاء الحسنى, well then for him is a beautiful recompensation. وسنقول له من أمرنا يسرا, and we will speak to him and we will say to him with easy, clement, peaceful words. We will address him in a nice manner. We will talk to him in a kind manner, in a clement manner. ثم أتبع سببا, then he travels again. These were the two options that Dhul Qarnayn was given in meeting the first group, Maghrib al-Shams. He was given these two options. He has two more journeys that follow. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't explicitly say that these two options were presented again. But the Mufassirun write, based on the Qara'in and other factors, these two options were repeated on each of his travels. ثم أتبع سببا, he travels again. حتى إذا بلغ مطلع الشمس, now he comes to the easternmost point, where the sun is at its rising point, and he sees a group of people there. حتى إذا بلغ مطلع الشمس وجدها تطلع على قوم لم نجعل لهم من دونها سترا. He comes to a group of people, they are unable to cover themselves. Now this could mean two opinions. They were unable to shade themselves from the sun. They had no materials for housing. They had no ability to pitch a tent, put a canopy, raise a roof. They had no protection from the sun. Sitran also means they were scantily dressed. They didn't have the means to clothe themselves in a proper manner, either of those two. Either they couldn't be protected from the sun, or regardless of that, they were unable to even clothe themselves. حتى إذا بلغ مطلع الشمس وجدها تطلع على قوم لم نجعل لهم من دونها سترا. Then it goes كذلك, straight. It doesn't say anything about their story. So the Mufassirun write, the same incident that took place with the people on the western side also took place at the eastern side. That he was given the option, إما أن تعذب وإما أن تتخذ فيهم حسنا, and he responded in a like manner. كذلك. This is how it was. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the Prophet ﷺ that whether the mushrikun, the kafirun, the Ahlul Makkah dispute, disagree, discuss, argue, it doesn't matter. كذلك. This is how it is. كذلك. وقد أحطنا بما لديه خبرا, and surely we had full compensation and knowledge with what he had. The takeaway point, سنقول له من أمرنا يسرا. In the tale of Dhul Qarnayn, you see extreme, clement, beautiful nature, soft nature. Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الرِّفْقَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes the one who is soft-natured, the one who is soft-hearted, the one who is clement and kind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Prophet ﷺ says, glad tidings, رَجُلًا سَمْحًا إِذَا اشْتَرَى وَإِذَا بَاعَ وَإِذَا اقْتَضَى. The one who is clement in his nature when he buys, when he sells, when he takes, when he asks for his loan back. And he's clement in all of his dealings. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, when he was passing away, then there was no clear opinion who is going to be the next Khalifa, who is going to take up after him. As he's on his deathbed, a group of companions walk in. It's a long story. I won't go into the whole story, but he says something very profound. They say, why don't you appoint this person? Why don't you appoint that person? Why don't you appoint this person? He says, do you know what it takes to be a great leader? Do you know what it takes to be a great leader? He says, you need a person who's strong, yet not harsh. You need a person who's soft, yet not weak. You need a person who's generous, yet not extravagant. And you need a person who withholds, yet not miser. This is beautiful. A person who's strong, yet not harsh. A person who's soft, yet not weak. A person who gives, but he's not extravagant. A person who withholds, but he's not miser. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us understanding and tawfiq. Allahumma hdina fi man hadayt, wa afina fi man afayt, wa tawallana fi man tawallayt, wa barik lana fi ma a'tayt, wa qina wasrif 'anna sharra ma qadayt, fa innaka taqdi wa la yuqda 'alayk, innahu la ya'izzu man 'adayt, wa la yadhillu man walayt, tabarakta rabbana wa ta'alayt. نستغفرك ربنا ونتوب إليك. اللهم اهدنا واهد بنا واهد الناس جميعا واجعلنا سببا لمن اهتدى. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه، وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب القبر والنار. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم، وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه